Good morning. Good morning. I'm Ted Rall. Over there is Robby West filling in for Manila Chan, who's off spelunking. You're watching the TMI Show, the Ted Manila Information Show for Monday, July 28th, 2025. Thank you so much for joining us. Robby, good to have you. Say something while I try to figure out my mic volume thing, which is messing up somehow.
No. I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to the people over on YouTube. We hit monetization over there on Saturday.
Woohoo!
It's been a long time coming. We came through. My wife, I am pleased to announce, was the 1,000th subscriber.
Really?
To the TMI Show. Yes.
Wow.
Yep. My wife. My wife subscribed, and she's just. And the very first article that she
was
saw
that intentional or was that a coincidence?
Oh, it was 100% intentional. I said, "Hey, you need to do this." So, being the nice wife that she is, she naturally subscribes, and then the very first show that pops up that she sees is the story that we did about whites only community in Arkansas, which my wife, being black, she thought that was kind of what's the word, crazy. So,
well, us doing the story, or them doing it.
A little bit of both. I mean, she's just like, "What are y'all doing? This this is crazy." Now, keep in mind, we live in Montana, which is probably the whitest state in the entire country.
Oh, it is, yeah, famously.
No, we've got some Indians scattered in, but for the most part, it's pasty white like me. I think a lot of that probably has to do with winter being here 9 months out of the year. But hey, it is what it is.
There is definitely some history there. All right, so everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and please like, follow, and share the show. We again thank you for the monetization, but it's just seriously the beginning. It literally starts out with pennies, literally,
yep.
And then it moves on to single-digit dollars. And on YouTube, really, truly, you don't start to see real money until you get like 10,000 or more subscribers. So we're at 1,000. We're like a baby show, but we've been doing this now for the better part of a year. And ever since we got Bidened out by the sanctions from our last gig. So yeah, you know, it is what it is, but here we are. And anyway, so we should probably just get right into the headlines. There's, as always, a lot to talk about. And let me take out, there we go. And just for people who are just joining us, well, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about. New York City is about to face a huge influx of ICE raids and agents. They're going to flood the zone, according to DHS. Protesters are gearing up. So we're anticipating a clash like we saw in LA between Angelenos and ICE, but here in New York. We'll talk about that. There are protests scheduled for today, both in the middle of the day as well as this evening after work. But I think things are going to heat up really in the outer boroughs. It's not really about where the official protests are going to happen. And Robby and I will talk about that. The Trump
I'll even disagree.
There might be some disagreement. You never know. The Trump administration's deporting an old IRA veteran who's been living peacefully here in the U.S. for over 35, 40 years. He's a great-grandfather, but Trump's decided that now he's a terrorist, even though he had all been forgiven and there's peace in Northern Ireland. But they're going to deport his sick old ass back to Ireland. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to a ceasefire. We're going to talk about like what that means and like what was the role of Trump's tariffs in this border dispute between Thailand and Cambodia, and so strange. And then finally, this would have been like a Manila topic, but I'm curious to see what you have to say about this, about the way people manage their time. There are people like me who are really obsessive. I have to finish a task. I can't be interrupted. You can't talk to me while I'm working on it. And then there's people like my mom was, who like she was a teacher and she could like be writing something while 3 students were talking to her at the same time. And she was like the ultimate multitasker. Anyway, there's a new study out talking about what they call monochronic and polychronic people. You might want to look that up if you're interested. And that's our show. So let's get to it. Imagine that we had Jaws. Okay, so first it was LA versus ICE. Now it's NYC versus ICE. Today, Monday, after Trump administrations announced that ICE agents are about to flood New York City here in order to crack down on undocumented immigrants. Over the weekend, protesters took place across the United States over Trump's immigration policies and the Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. Under the One Big Beautiful Bill, ICE will become the biggest military or police force in the United States. So I guess we'd say paramilitaries, because that's really what they are. Demonstrators say they believe the bill will hurt working class families of all races and are calling for the whole thing to be repealed. Not likely to happen. The protests are happening after Attorney General Pam Bondi announced last week that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, is suing New York City and Mayor Eric Adams over sanctuary laws. So just to bring us back a little bit, what happened here? A year ago, Eric Adams was facing federal corruption charges because he is corrupt. And and the Trump administration said, we will make those charges just go away if you agree to cooperate with ICE and not enforce your sanctuary city laws. Adams said, no problem. Come in and take any brown people you want away, but not me because I'm brown. Then they did that, but now even so, Trump is still suing him because now he wants the unenforced law to go away, as well as the enforcement. The lawsuit is alleging that the sanctuary policies are still interfering with the enforcement of federal immigration law. It should be pointed out that last week, an off-duty Customs and Border Protection officer was essentially assassinated in Upper Manhattan. Another protest is scheduled for 6 p.m. at City Hall Park. That's in Lower Manhattan tonight, Eastern Time. Humphrey Bogart's line to a Nazi officer in Casablanca comes to mind. There are certain sections of New York, Major, that I wouldn't advise you to try to invade. So Robby, here's the deal here. I mean, look, obviously it's always hard to know, to be able to anticipate protests or how intense they will be or not be. This could all fizzle easily. But my gut tells me this won't fizzle. The ICE is coming here to the nation's most liberal city, with 11% Republicans, as we were talking about before the show. They're going to go to the outer boroughs, Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens, that have tons and tons of immigrants, many of them undocumented, and many of them some green card holders as well. But for the most part, these are big minority communities. They're going to come in there, and those neighborhoods are very protective of themselves, and they're going to get some support from leftists who are, full-fledged U.S. citizens. And I think it would not be shocking. In fact, it'll be shocking if there are not violent clashes between ICE and New Yorkers in the coming week.
Yeah, I'm sure that you're right. And to my detriment, I've never been to New York. I've never been to LA. So just a couple of questions, because you've been to both. You live in New York right now. Which city seems to be feistier? Like, which one has the more volatile population? If it comes down to brass tacks, which population is more likely to stand up and actually fight, LA or New York?
Well, I've spent a lot of time in LA too. I've lived in LA, not as much as New York. I know New York a lot better, but I've worked in LA. I was at the LA Times. I was at KFI Radio in LA, and I would rate them about equal. They're both equally feisty. New Yorkers really don't like nonsense, and in both cases, we tend to view things on a very personal level. When you live in close contact, elbow to elbow on the subway, this is a city of 8 million people, and you more so than Angelenos. So Los Angeles is important to understand, is a city of neighborhoods where basically it's grids separated by big boulevards, and inside those those grids are kind of like very individual neighborhoods that are like a city within a city, and those people feel a bond to one another. New York, it also has neighborhoods and ethnic enclaves, but our affiliations are really like, if you're a fellow New Yorker, I tend to feel bonded to you regardless of your race if you're in trouble, just because it's such a hard, expensive city to live in that we have to stick together.
Well, here's the thing, though, right? And here's the interesting part about this that I don't understand about your city. Mondani ran, and he won primarily because of the cost of living in New York, specifically rents, wages not keeping up. I mean, he ran on economic populism.
True.
So how can you, on one hand, say you're being priced out of the city, which is true, that your wages are not sufficient, which is true, and that the rents are screwing you, which is true, while out the other side of your mouth, literally go to war for a demographic of people that's directly responsible for higher rents, lower wages, and pricing you out of the city. So you said the New Yorkers famously don't tolerate bullshit. Isn't that the very definition of bullshit? You want people to stand up and fight to protect the same people who are screwing them.
Well, Robby, as you know, we've talked about immigration. And as you know, I agree with you that just the law of supply and demand indicates that the more workers you have come into the country, then that has a downward effect on wages overall for everybody, right? And so I agree with that. The thing is, okay, in a city like New York, though, it doesn't feel like your job prospects are being harmed by immigration. Let me explain why. First of all, there's no place in the country that's easier to find work. There's always a job. Maybe not a good job, but there's always work. That's why people live in cities.
There's work, but you have a living. Well, sure, you have work, but you have a living wage. For example, I could go to Alabama, and I could go work on a cotton field, because hey, I've done that. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm finding work's not the problem. The problem is finding a job that will pay me a wage so I can provide for my family. And if I'm competing against the entire freaking third world, how can I do that?
Well, I think that's the issue. Now, obviously, everybody's experience is unique to themselves in New York and everywhere else. But my general sense is that if you are if you're looking for work here, you can probably find a job that by national standards pays well. It's not hard to find a $20 or $25 an hour job in New York City. It really almost anyone can. You don't have to have a fancy degree or anything like that. So when I think the way psychologically most New Yorkers view it, they don't view Mexicans or other Puerto Ricans, or well, Puerto Ricans are Americans, but Mexicans or people from other countries as hurting their job prospects. They're taking jobs that, truly are like entry level, like in the kitchen in a restaurant or whatever, that most like white New Yorkers, for example, wouldn't want anyway. But also there's the sense that like, I ought to be able, even in New York City, to live, to earn $25 an hour and be able to pay my rent. You look at that, you're like, those wages aren't really that unreasonable. The rents are unreasonable. Sure. So that's kind of the psychology here. I mean, I'm paying $5,100 a month in rent. I mean, that's ridiculous. If you saw my apartment, you'd say, okay, Ted, that's a nice apartment, but I mean, be serious. It's like, and if I said, oh, this is a $2,000 a month apartment, you might be like, that seems about right. And so it's like, or maybe 2,500, right? So sure. I think the rent is too damn high resonates, whether it should or it doesn't. It just does in New York. And I think, there's a sense of community here too, right? Like this is a city of people who are busting their ass every single day to try to get, and not to mention also, this is the traditional gateway to immigration in New York City. Everything about the city reminds us. We have the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. We have Ellis Island is right here. We have tons of recent immigrants, people who barely speak English, but their kids all speak English, and we know them. So we literally see, unlike a place like Montana, we see the immigrant experience every single day. I go to my falafel place and get a shawarma, and it's a Palestinian dude who he speaks English, but he also, he's also Arabic. And then at the same time, his kid is at Cornell. Okay. And you're like, and it's totally Americanized and skateboards and everything. The point is that's the immigrant experience. We see it every day. And we just don't, I think that like, if again, even in New York, if they were going to Rikers Island and picking up members of Tren de Aragua, who were, involved in violent crimes and deporting them back to Venezuela, no one would care. Okay, like we have homegrown criminals. We don't need to import them, but that's not what's happening here. When you're, going into, a restaurant in Queens and you start rounding up like, a hardworking lady who's just trying to make ends meet. And, it doesn't seem right. Not to mention also the way that, the way that ICE comports itself, I think has a huge effect here. I mean, this is a city where you worry about crime. So like, if you have random dudes with their, like, they bought like police jackets on the, on eBay, driving around in vans, wearing masks and balaclavas and, in 95-degree heat, and kidnapping people without identifying themselves, they're going to get a fucking reaction.
Of course. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, the way the ICE is doing, I support what ICE is doing, but I oppose the way the ICE is doing it. I mean, a police force is not an army. So first and foremost,
it's not a police force. It's not a police force either. This is a paramilitary force. This is the kind of thing that the United States hasn't traditionally had. I mean, I think maybe the KKK would have been an example of a paramilitary force, right? But like they're vigilantes.
Back when it was founded, sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And like it's like this is a paramilitary force. This the kind of thing that you see in third world dictatorships, where you're like, you'll be crossing a border and some guy, just a dude's like, let me see your passport. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? No. And like, you're not wearing a uniform. You have no official status. You don't say who you are. You just have a shit-eating grin. Like, that's not getting you anywhere with me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And I mean, so again, I oppose what ICE is. I support the mission that ICE has. I oppose the way that they're doing it. I mean, you should be able to go in. You should be wearing a uniform. You should identify yourself. You say, okay, this is who I am. This is why I'm here. You're here illegally. I'm sending you home.
And also, they should have just cause, right? I mean, look.
Well, just cause is that if someone's here illegally, sorry,
I'm
that's
saying
just cause.
Right,
Peace
but
out.
You can't just approach someone and say, "Oh, you have brown skin. Prove that you're an American." We don't have an ID law in this country.
Well, we're about to deport a old white Irishman. So
yeah,
so let's just drop the whole race card, because that doesn't really fly.
Well, mostly, they've been, honestly, we do know that the raids have mostly been about profiling, not about,
of course.
What you want is like, Robby El Westo is, we know he's here illegally. He was reported by his wife who doesn't like him anymore. Let's go check him out. That's okay. Like, I mean, obviously they're following the law, but like you said, I agree with what you said about how they do it matters. The fact that, and they really should start with the baddies first.
I agree, but here's why they're not going to, is because the prison complex gets paid by having that body in that cell. So
correct.
Let's just pretend like that's not going to happen, because, frankly, it's not. Now, here's another question I have for you, Ted. Again, I'm showing my ignorance here. I've never been to your city.
Mm-hmm.
South Texas, and it's kind of surprised everybody because it's such a high Mexican population, turned out in overwhelming numbers in support of Trump, because those legal Mexicans oppose illegal immigration because it's driving down their wages. Are you seeing that same kind of effect in New York? Are the legal immigrants happy that this is happening with these mass deportations, because it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to increase the amount of money they have in their wallets?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, there's always a tendency of the earlier, older legal immigrants to kind of pull up the ladder into the treehouse and say, like, well, we got ours and we don't want to share now. So there's definitely
they came here legally. I mean, they came here legally, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Most people who are legal immigrants in the United States did not come here legally. Most of them overstayed visas. They had fake green card marriages. I mean, really, truly, nobody came here really legally. I mean, hell, the people who came across the Bering Strait didn't come here legally. Everybody just sort of showed up. The people who came to Ellis Island, they weren't legal. They were basically they showed up without a visa, and they wanted workers, and they're like, oh, we can pay these people nothing. Great, sure. Come on in. It was just what happened with Biden.
Well, of course. But here's the big difference, though, right? Is that with Biden, you come across the border, and and let's be honest, we would not be having this conversation if it wasn't for Biden.
Technically, they came legally, right? I mean, it was legal.
Non-enforcement does not make it legal. A president is not a king. A president cannot repeal law. He can choose not to enforce it.
But the president can say, okay, come on, you can come in and wait here, and we'll process you and figure you out later.
Yeah, and then you have a new president that comes in and says, you're going to go home now. Your time is up. And let's be honest. Of all of Trump's many flaws, and there are many of them, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm a right winger,
mm-hmm.
but I'm not a Trumpy. I fully support Trump on his mission with deporting illegal immigrants. Full stop.
By the way,
I get behind this mission.
We have a viewer question that I think is worth talking about here. Backside of Nowhere says, I'd really like to know why ICE isn't busting employers of the undocumented.
Because they're bribed. That's why.
Right.
The entire system's corrupt.
By the way, there was a really interesting piece in yesterday's New York Times about a company. Where was it? It was, I think, in Kansas or something. But it was a company that hired a lot of undocumented workers and was trying not to. So they subscribed to E-Verify, which is basically when someone applies for a job, they provide their social security number and other information. It goes into a computer. The federal government then comes back and says whether the person is authorized to work in the United States or not. This company was like, we did everything. We don't want to hire illegals. We used E-Verify. But a lot of illegal immigrants have fake IDs, stolen IDs.
Identity theft.
So identity theft. And so it turned out that, and so ICE came and arrested a bunch of their employees, and they were devastated. They were it almost destroyed their business entirely. And so they asked the federal government, what should we do to avoid this happening again? Because we really can't have 2/3 of our workforce arrested, and then like we can't do our job, or we can't run our business. Sure. And they were like, just keep using E-Verify. So I mean, even businessmen who are trying to do the right thing and follow the law, the government's not doing a good job of allowing of figuring out a system that allows them to do so. But I agree that if there was no demand, then obviously there would be no.
Yeah, and I know we have to move on, but I mean, one of the things I just really want to point out is that one of the reasons why this is such a major issue, both political parties are guilty of it. We talked about this before on other shows. Reagan granted the amnesty back in the 80s with the promise from Congress that they would secure the border. It's never happened. Republicans want the cheap labor. Mm-hmm. Democrats want the votes. And the ultimate loser, just kind of like what Achilles Larry was talking about last week on our show about economics, is the American worker, because immigration deflates wages, whereas inflation drives up the cost of living. And neither political party cares, and that's where you get a Donald Trump. If Donald Trump fails, mark my words on this, it's going to get violent. And I don't want that to happen, but it will. And both political parties need to get their hands around this.
Speaking of violence, I do want to issue this warning that, I mean, honestly, the federal government should not come to New York this way. Like they say, come correct or don't come at all. Don't come this way. Do not come in here.
Is that what it is?
Do not come here with do not come here with ICE. Do not come here with your armored personnel carriers and your goon squads. Don't come to New York. Like, New York doesn't play, and it's like, we're not going to tolerate it.
It fizzled out in LA. What makes New York different?
Well, it'll probably fizzle out here too eventually, because there's going to be violence. Getting tear gassed is no fun, and we don't have an organized left who can keep it going. But all I can say is it's going to be ugly optics. I think I have a question for you, Robby. I mean,
sure.
The president seems really interested in provoking visuals that he thinks will play to the base. Like, look, I'm sending in the goon squad into sanctuary cities like LA and New York. Look at these, liberal protesters with their little signs running away from the tear gas. So obviously he doesn't care about the support of New York and LA, which he doesn't have anyway. Is this really playing or not? Because, with the right-wing base. And the reason I ask that is because the polls show that Trump is losing ground, and he's underwater now on the immigration issue, which was a super strong issue for him. So if he's perceived as kicking ass and taking names and deporting like crazy, then why is he losing ground there?
Well, because with the Trump cultists, yeah, sure, they're going to cheerlead it. So you get the Benny Johnsons and those douchebags like that. But yeah, rah, 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 Orange Jesus is kicking butt. People on the right, though, like me on the populist right, we understand what this is. This is Trump trying to deflect from Epstein. That's what this is. This is him trying to change the conversation.
It's not just him keeping a campaign promise?
No. Oh, God, no. Not like this. No, I mean, why would you?
He's only deporting a third as many as Obama did, but there were no optics. Obama didn't send in goon squads to major cities. He went out to Arkansas and went to the chicken place that nobody ever sees.
This is all theater. I'm telling you, mark my words on this. I'm talking specifically to the people on the right now. The left, I hope that some of y'all will come over and join those of us on the right like me, but I don't know, we'll have to see. But for the people on the right, this is a distraction. This is Trump trying to change. He's trying to change the conversation. He's had a really bad couple of weeks right now. He's had a very bad couple of weeks. There is a major split. It's probably more than a split at this point. I think it's a civil war in his base. I mean, yesterday, was it yesterday or Friday, when John Kiriakou was talking with on Redacted, and they had Thomas Massey on. That's the split right there. And that's what has Trump doing this. He's trying to change the conversation. That's all this is. Mark my words. That is what this is. This is deflection. He's trying to change. He's trying to change the conversation.
Well, I know he is trying to change the conversation. I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is that. I think.
Oh, I guarantee you.
But if it's playing that way, then in politics, perception is reality.
Well, what else could it be? I mean, Ted, if you're going to, okay, let me put it this way: if I was President West, and if my campaign promise is, I am going to round up every single illegal migrant that's out there, because that's what I would campaign on. And by the way, I would win on that if I had the money. I would not send in an army to do it, because all it's going to do is just drive people underground. It's going to cause a problem. I would make the economic case. I would address the country, say the reason why your wages suck is the same reason why sand is cheap. The dignity of labor no longer exists. Your work is not worth what it should be. Meanwhile, our government is $37 trillion in debt, and we're paying for it by printing out more dollars that further devalues every dollar that you have in your pocket. So I'm fucking you two different ways. I would make that case.
Let's talk about that IRA veteran. The Trump administration is deporting an 82-year-old former leader of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, if you're old enough to remember them, who has lived peacefully since the end of the resistance against the British occupation of Northern Ireland. Gabriel Megahy, 82 years old, lived in New York City for decades after Northern Ireland gave up its fight for freedom. But a June 20th letter from the Homeland Security Department warned that his quote-unquote parole was being terminated 30 years after he and other IRA members were allowed to stay here in the USA. The Belfast native was convicted in 1983 in Brooklyn federal court for conspiring to buy missiles to shoot down British helicopters amid the violent clashes in Northern Ireland known as the Troubles. At the time, the feds considered him the officer commanding of America and Canada for the U.S. Megahy, known by the nickname Skinny Legs, who was convicted with three others. You know, you don't get to choose your nickname, I guess, right? Yeah. With then U.S. Attorney U.S. Drury describing him at the time as the most culpable of these defendants. And the group as a whole is a network of men who sought to use this country as a base of terrorist activities, according to the reports. No one wants peace more than us, Megahy, who first moved to Jackson Heights, Queens back in 1975, insisted at his sentencing. He got out of prison in 1988. Megahy and four other IRA members were then allowed to remain in the U.S. as part of the Good Friday Accord, the April 1998 agreement, which ended decades of violence in Ireland. Now the grandfather of 14 and the great-grandfather of 5, records show that he moved to Delaware in 2019, is reeling after DHS warned that he'll be fined and criminally prosecuted if he stays in the U.S. DHS is terminating your parole, according to the one-page letter. Do not attempt to unlawfully remain in the United States. The federal government will find you. Please depart the United States immediately. Megahy, who relies on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to pay for expensive medicine necessary to treat his heart, also faces the loss of benefits. DHS and Megahy declined comment, but he said that he had no regrets. Not a one. I'd do it all again, but I wouldn't get caught next time.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for honesty, I guess. I mean, I don't know, Ted. I mean, the way I see this is double jeopardy, honestly, because he went in, he did his time, he was allowed to stay. I'm a hardliner on immigration. Everyone knows that, but I also like civil liberties. He's already been punished. What's the point? And he's an old man. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, like how some people they try and go find like these ancient Nazis, like 100, 102, 103 years old.
Yeah.
What's the point? Just leave them be.
Well, I think that, I think in the case of the Nazis, you could say like, well, listen, you were free, 80 more years than you deserved to be, and you don't deserve to be free one day longer.
Okay. Then what about this guy?
Because, first of all, I completely agree with his cause. I think the only bad thing about the Troubles is that they came to an end. Northern Ireland should not be part of the UK. It should be part of Ireland. Anyone who looks at a map can see that Northern Ireland should not be in England. It's part of Ireland, obviously. And, I think the IRA's cause was just and noble. And the only problem with it is it came to an end because they lost. Okay, but the war came to an end. The resistance lost. The oppressors won. Fine. And I think the difference here also is, look, the IRA didn't leave. They didn't kill Americans. They killed Brits, and it was a resistance army. So, and I mean, look, New York was very supportive of the IRA as a population back in the 80s. I remember going to IRA bars where they tithed a certain percent of the profits to the IRA, and I was laughing at the whole idea that, like, they were trying to use, dude was trying to buy missiles in New York City. What were you thinking? I know it was a wild place in the 80s, but holy shit.
Yeah, I think I went to Afghanistan and talked to some Afghans personally if I was going to do that.
I know a guy who knows a guy.
There you go.
So, yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, no, if I was going to try to reconstitute the Confederate Army, I don't think I would go to New York City to do it. I think I'll try to go someplace else.
Yeah, Pakistan's a good spot too. So yeah, no, it's very strange. Roddy, what do you think? I smell computer generated letter. I smell like basically the DHS went through everybody who's ever been convicted of any crime and has a green card or has served time, and they're like, we can technically revoke your parole, and so they're just doing it across. They're just doing a sweep, and they're not really taking into account individual cases. But like, yeah, the dude's 82. It's basically a death sentence. Obviously Ireland has national health care. He'll be fine, but it's absurd.
Well, the thing is, he's already been punished. I mean, for example, if he was here, he was obviously an immigrant. I mean, the dude has a green card. Mm-hmm. He was convicted. He went to prison. If you're going to deport him, he may do it then.
Yeah, I guess he didn't. He must not have gotten his citizenship, right? Otherwise, this couldn't happen.
Yeah, he's a green card holder. So I mean, the way that I see it, I'm about to break every brain that's out there. I'm a hardliner on immigration. Y'all just heard it in the first segment. The dude's already been punished. Mm-hmm. If you're going to deport him,
they should have deported him. They should have deported him at the time,
and then you kick him out. You don't wait. Double jeopardy is called that for a reason. The mm-hmm. government does not have the right to take your property or your life or your liberty after you've already paid your debt to society. They don't get to do that twice. You do it all once or you don't.
Anamando Rake says, I don't think this immigration show is for Epstein, Tulsi, and the Russia show is for Epstein.
Well, the Russia show, Americans have kind of lost the plot with it. Americans are bored with it, to be just totally honest with you. I think that's a big part of what that is. What this is all about, this is about catching headlines on Fox News, on CNN, and the MSDNC. It's about showing American troops on the streets of an American city clashing with American citizens for the benefit of illegal immigrants. And all this is for is to generate headlines. He's trying to change the conversation. It is a distraction. It works if he's able to create that wedge, right? Because the fact that Cenk Uygur and me, of all things, are actually agreeing on anything whatsoever is absolutely insane. Well, how do you make sure that agreement comes to an end? It's by doing what he's doing here. Now, I could be completely wrong, but I don't think so.
By the way, this is all theater. Completely out of left field. I don't know why this is coming up in the feed here on the YouTube feed from Tony J. Civil forfeiture is still pretty common. And Backside replied, civil forfeiture should be unconstitutional. Absolutely. Civil forfeiture is a multi-billion-dollar a year business for American government agencies, mostly law enforcement. They literally can pull you off. They literally look at, they sit on the side of the highway and they wait for people to drive by with fancy cars that they want to add to their police department, pull the person over on a pretext. And if they find like cash, they'll say, oh, you have a lot of cash. You must be involved in something illegal. We don't really know what. We're going to impound your car and your cash. Then later on, they never charge you, but they keep the cash and they keep the car. You have to go to court to try to get it back. In many cases, it costs a lot more to hire the lawyers, and it's not worth it. So people walk away from their property. And it's a disgusting habit. The U.S. Supreme Court has a practice, I should say. The U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly expressed concern about it, but they haven't manned up and put an end to it, and they should.
No, it's deft. And here's a quick question for you before we move on to the next thing. Where's Mondani on all this? With ICE coming to the city and immigration.
We'll hear from him. Well, obviously, he's going to be anti-ICE. I mean, look, even anti-illegal immigration New Yorkers are not going to be into ICE being in New York, acting the way that they are. I think you're going to get like 1% of New Yorkers are going to defend ICE. It's just there's no approval of these kinds of unfair tactics that they're doing. Now, if you show up and you arrest someone, who is here undocumented, fair and square, and you do it like a man, wearing a uniform, no mask, they're going to have a lot more support, or at least tolerance. But that's not how they're doing it. Mamdani is going to be, he's going to have to thread this needle very carefully, because already the powers that be, like the real estate interests, are already up his ass over like Israel and stuff. So he's going to have to basically express concern, show support for the detainees while at the same time, being like, he can't come out as pro illegal immigration, because that'll be a bad look. So he'll have to figure out a middle ground.
But is there a middle ground? I mean, either you support the open borders or you don't.
Well, there's a middle ground. I mean, you could say like, look,
explain it to me, because I'm too slow and too stupid to understand this. Explain it to me.
No one believes that.
Oh, I do.
So I think what's I think, for example, there's many ways and many complexions that a middle ground could have, but it could be something along the lines of, of course, a nation state should control its borders, but that said, we have a history of not doing so for a long time. Therefore, if people who are already here, we don't want to disrupt their lives and uproot and destroy families. So if you can prove that you've obeyed the law and done everything right up until now, we'll provide you with a path towards citizenship, but we're going to then start controlling the border today. That's a middle ground.
If that's the case, then what I advocate for is deporting every single illegal immigrant to New York City. God be with you.
Well, we at this point, we could probably use the population, since so many people have left. All right, let's get into this situation in Southeast Asia. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in a breakthrough to resolve deadly border clashes that entered day 5. That, according to the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who chaired the talks as heads of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations regional bloc, also known as ASEAN, said that both sides have reached a common understanding to take steps to return to normalcy. In other words, this is not a peace accord. This is just a ceasefire, and with the details to be worked out later. Prime Minister of Cambodia, Hun Manet, and Thai Acting Prime Minister Phuntham Wechayachai, I think is how you pronounce that, have agreed to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire with effect from midnight local time there in Thailand and Cambodia. Tuesday, Anwar said as he read out a joint statement. This border clash has been pretty much an ongoing controversy since the French drew the border in 1907 between Thailand and Cambodia, and basically there's a variance between the text of the original border agreement, which favors Thailand, and the drawing of that goes with the text that favors Cambodia. Cambodia wants to go with the map, and Thailand wants to go with the text. And basically, at issue here are several thousand acres that include some key Buddhist temples. So they're kind of fighting over religious stuff here too. And this is also, interestingly, Trump threatened both countries with sky-high tariffs starting August 1st if they didn't agree to a ceasefire. Cambodia has almost no trade with the United States, so I don't think they cared about that. Thailand has a lot of trade with the United States, so they did care. I think Cambodia agreed simply because Cambodia is the weaker of the two sides here. Thailand fielding F-16s against Cambodia. Cambodia just has artillery. It's a very, very poor country compared to Thailand. So
sure.
I think that, so basically everyone had a motive to come to the table.
Yeah, I mean, Cambodia's, it's war torn, it's landlocked, what natural resources does it have? It doesn't have girly men. It doesn't have a coastline.
It does have good tourism. Seriously, it has Angkor Wat, which is a breathtakingly spectacular.
Have you ever been there?
I have. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's stunning. Yeah, it's also it was very dangerous when I went. I went in a bus full of tourists, and the bus after mine was raided by Khmer Rouge fighters who killed everyone on the bus. So it's important to catch the right bus.
It is important to catch the right bus, but also, Paul Pop was just a nut. Is Cambodia? Does the government control most of the territory of the country now, or is it?
100%. Yeah. No, the government is weak, but it's not like it's a failed state and there's no civil conflict going on now. There's no guerrilla groups. The Khmer Rouge are finished, done. So
the Vietnamese finished them off, didn't they?
They did. Yeah. The Vietnamese don't really get like credit, right? It was kind of like, will no Western country take out the trash here with the killing fields and this genocide? All right, fuck it, we'll do it. And this was the Vietnamese just like 5 years after defeating the United States, right? 4 years. Yeah. So they kicked major ass.
Hey, if you have a veteran army, you may as well use it, right? Before you lose all before you lose that knowledge. So
very, very true. Very true. And finally, last but not least, arguments about punctuality are common, but experts say they're often really about something else, the different ways that we relate to time. Social scientists have worked for the better part of a century to understand our varying approaches to the clock. In the 50s, the anthropologist Edward Hall coined the terms monochronic and polychronic in order to describe different cultural attitudes to time. In Northern Europe and the US, which Dr. Hall said were monochronic societies, he said that people tended to emphasize deadlines and work sequentially, completing one task before moving on to the next. In Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East, on the other hand, he said those were polychronic societies, where he said that people were more comfortable shifting gears in the middle of a task and less rigid about sticking to a schedule. It's certainly true that in those countries, like, let's say, oh, what time does the bus leave? Oh, the bus leaves at 3:00. It's like, might be 6, might be 7, maybe not until tomorrow. Dr. Hall's insights have inspired generations of organizational theorists and management experts. And while he originally made his observations about societies, others have now observed that people's individual time use styles vary within a society. Studies suggest that people who are the most creative, motivated, and productive when they can work in their preferred style, whether that's dipping in and out or focusing laser-like on a single task. Becoming aware of your own relationship to time can make your life easier and help you negotiate conflicts with the people around you. One way to gauge your time value is to notice how you respond to interruptions. If you're preparing a presentation when a colleague calls to talk about something, do you pick up and say you're busy, or do you make time for what might turn out to be a 20-minute conversation? If your response is that you would send that call directly to voicemail, you're likely monochronic, said Donna Ballard, a chronemics expert at U of Texas at Austin. People who manage their time as a series of tasks to tick off the to-do list live by the clock and are primed, at least during work hours, to prioritize obligations over relationships. For someone like this, an interruption, almost by definition, is irritating, said Alan Bludum, professor of management at U of Missouri and author of the Human Organization of Time. Polychronic people, on the other hand, give primacy to experiences and relationships that don't always fit into prearranged schedules. The other day, a cousin of Miss Kelch was visiting from out of town, and although she had an assignment to do for work, she decided to put it off for a day so she could go off to a hike together. Not every deadline is really truly urgent, she said, so when interruptions come up, and I feel like they're valuable enough, it makes me reprioritize.
Yeah.
Monochronic here for sure. How about you?
Very much so, especially whenever I'm working on doing, as you know, I tend to have relatively busy days. And
yes, you do.
especially if I'm going through, if I'm editing clips or making videos or something. That seems to always be the time where my wife will come in and say, "Hey, Robby, let's go talk. We need to connect on an emotional level." And it's like, no, we really don't. I need to get this stuff done. I'm behind on the TMI show or deprogrammed or DMZs. I've got stuff to do. So when are you going to be done? Like 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when I'll be done. I have time for you between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. That is my day. That is your window. And I kid you not. So my wife, again, I already talked to y'all who are watching the show. Y'all know my wife is black. Well, she runs on what's called CPT. Can you guess what CPT stands for?
No.
Colored people's time.
Oh, okay. Because I've heard. I mean, certainly I'm familiar with black people time.
Oh yeah, so she calls it CPT, and so 2 o'clock might mean 2:15, 2:30, maybe 2:40.
And she's never early though, right? Like when my mom and I visited, I took her to the Caribbean for the first time, and she'd never been. We arrive at the airport, and God, where was this? Oh yeah, it was Turks and Caicos. So we arrive at the airport at Providenciales, and a guy comes over. Do you need a taxi? Yes, yeah, we do. Okay, so we walk over to his taxi. He's like, wait here. And she goes, where's he going? I go, he's going to see if he can find more people so he can take several groups of people at once in his van. And it's like, she's like, okay, how long is it going to take? My mom goes, probably a while. And it's like,
you're herding cats.
And I'm like, and she's like, well, can't we go now? I'm like, do you know how to drive the van? Do you have the keys? I mean, we have to chill. You're on island time. It's the islands. You've got to just enjoy the ocean the breezes, and just relax because it's not going to change anything.
Yeah. But hey, you're on vacation, so it starts in the parking lot. That's just
that's right. I mean, it would help if there were Mai Tais, but
Oh yeah, no, for sure. But if you ask my wife is ever early, the answer is yes. If, for example, if she's picking up someone from the airport, she's always there early.
That's good.
So she does have a hierarchy of prioritization. So if it's something that's really important, yeah, she goes in, she gets the crap done. And she's also a medical coder, so she has deadlines and quotas for all the codes. So yeah, that's all great.
My ex-wife had this thing. I don't know how it fits in, where she was like, she was a chronic optimist or an optimist chronic. So what I mean by that is, so I would be like, oh, okay, meet me downtown at such and such time. And so she'd show up late, and I'd be like, well, what time do you leave? She said, oh, well, 20 minutes ago. And I'm like, it's a 35-minute trip. Why do you leave in 20 minutes? Well, there was that one time I made it in 20 minutes. Yeah, but that one time is requires perfect synchronicity of the subway gods. It's like in the real world, you have to allow a little extra time for a wait, a delay, just stuck between stations.
Your ex-wife would have fit right in here in Montana.
Really?
Because you don't have subways. It's once you get outside of the towns, like
you could be attacked by a bear or something that could delay you.
Well, yeah, I mean that could happen, or you have a herd of cows just decides to stop right there on the road. So I mean that does happen, but you have cowboys though. They'll drive them out. So all things being equal, though, it's typically easier to kind of go through and manage because, well, there's just as much man-made obstruction here. Now, sure, I mean, you might have a bear decide to just take a crap right in the middle of the highway, which, yes, it does happen. But you can drive around the bear, or you take your pictures, and typically it doesn't take them a whole lot of time to do their business. So being an optimist with travel is good in the summer. Now, wintertime, that's a different story. If you're going to go someplace and a drive that normally takes you 20 minutes, you better figure about an hour because it's going to be cold. The roads are icy. People spin out. You got to go slow. So I don't know. It's just weird. My default setting is on time is late. And depending on the situation, on time is way too early for my wife, especially her family.
Well, I mean, so I think I wanted to bring this up because I think it is important to know, as Shakespeare said, know thyself. And like, you should know yourself, right? It's like really important. It's true. When I get interrupted in the middle of a task, especially if it's one where you're like thinking about like tech stuff, like 5 or 6 things at the same time, it is maddening. You totally like, it's like, no, like, leave me alone. I need large blocks of uninterrupted time. I'd be done. Like, I don't understand people who are like my mother, who could just, talk to 6 people at once. And
I can't do that. I'm a very single-minded individual. I'm very task-driven. So you give me a task, and I do it. And with my job, my full-time job, when I had my review, like, now keep in mind, this is the same boss that I've ripped a brand new orifice on, that you and Manila heard a couple months ago. Same lady. And so I had my review, and she's like, Robby, what can I do to help your job be more enjoyable, help you be more productive? Said, tell me what you need me to do, stay the hell out of my way. That's literally what I told. That's in my review. Give me what you want, leave me alone. And it's like, so, but what support do you need? I said, the support I need is for you to stay the hell out of my life. That is the support that I need.
Well, that is support.
That's it. Yeah, 100%. No,
yeah, lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Yeah, you are the problem. Get out of the way.
Yeah, no, I feel that completely. And by the way, I don't think that, polychronic people are bad people. Yeah. I think, they in many ways, there's certain jobs like air traffic control. They're absolutely, you can't have someone like me. No. Like, wait, I'm working on this one thing. I can't I can't step away. That would not work.
No, 100%. No, I'm right there with you. I mean, I think those people just tend to be more artistic. I think that they just tend to be, they're able to process so much more information so much faster than what I'm able to. It really does kind of make me kind of jealous, and make me completely honest. But I mean, that's just not how God made me. I'm a single-minded dude. I think about one thing at a time. I solve that problem, and then I move on to the next one.
That's totally how I am too. Robby, I think that leaves it for today. Thanks so much for sitting in for Manila Chan off spelunking. We will be, she should be back tomorrow. I'm Ted Rall. That's Robby West sitting in. Please like, follow, and share the show as much as possible. Vote early and vote often. And Thank you so much for being here. Bye. Yeah.